and welcome to CI Connect On Demand. We're so excited you're here. Get ready for some awesome content brought to you by some of our amazing staff members at CI Pediatric Therapy Centers. Feel free to pause, rewind, or take a break at any time. All content in this training is designed to provide general recommendations. Though we may discuss particular therapy approaches or strategies, always check in with your child's therapy team when implementing something new at home. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact us at any time at connect@citherapies.com. Thanks! Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'll introduce myself first. Hi, my name is Erin. I'm the recreational therapist here at CI, and I'm so excited to hear all about Wausau's parent-caregiver training event, which is all about facilitating those developmental milestones through play. And just as a friendly reminder, these presentations are being recorded for our families to view on the website at a later date. So it's up to you whether or not you want to keep your camera on, but we do ask that you keep your microphone on mute, just so we can hear each other during the Zoom meeting. And there also will be time at the end of the meeting if you have any questions or comments for the Wausau team. But with that, I'm so excited to learn with you all tonight, and thank you for joining us. But I will hand it over to the Wausau team.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. So tonight we have our Wausau crew here, and we're going to be talking about developmental milestones and how we can work on those just through play skills, like Erin had said. And I am Lauren, and I'm one of the speech therapists at the Wausau clinic. And then I will let everyone else introduce themselves so it highlights who they are.
So I'm Jennifer. I'm the other speech therapist at the Wausau office.
I'm Nicole. I'm an occupational therapist up in Wausau.
And then I'm Kelsey, and I'm the PT up in Wausau.
All right, so today the goals for our presentation are just for you all to have a beginning understanding about what those milestones are for kiddos ages 1 through 5, and how we can help advance those skills using play. We will have a couple of recommended toys for each age, and then at the end, if we have time, we'll have a little bit of like brainstorm practicing time, just talking about the toys and the kiddos that you have at home. I'm assuming, but I don't know, that if everyone's like super familiar with CI. So again, we are from Wausau, so we're the furthest away from Madison, but we've got locations all over the Madison area otherwise, and we work on speech and language and occupational therapy, physical therapy, and then some other variety of disciplines in between. So we can go to the next slide. So as a speech therapist, we focus on building those communication skills so kids are able to interact with other people. So that could be looking at play skills early on. It could be making sure that kids can be understood. So thinking about those specific speech sounds. It could also be their sentence structure. So can they put sentences together? And then also just looking at those social skills. So a lot of kiddos on the autism spectrum have a harder time maintaining or building social relationships. So we can work on that as well.
As occupational therapists, we help kids to do the things that they want and need to do every day through therapeutic use of meaningful everyday activities, which we also call occupations. And so kids in this age range, their biggest occupation is play. So I'm really excited to highlight that tonight. Other big things that kids need to do are, working on self-care skills, whether that's feeding, dressing, sleeping. And we help them do those things through developing motor skills, and those things. Kelsey?
And then in physical therapy, we're just helping kids move and attaining their gross motor milestones. So these could be things like walking, running, jumping, going up and down stairs, and even riding a bike.
Jen, you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you for that, Lauren. Yes, it's helpful if I unmute. So as we go through the different developmental ages tonight, it's important to keep in mind that children do progress at different rates. So there is a range of acquisition of skills when kids learn skills. There's a general guideline, but some kids develop things a little earlier than others, some a little bit later than others. So that's important to keep in mind. And another thing to keep in mind is if a child is born premature, until they reach the age of 2, we adjust their age. So if they are born a month premature, we calculate their age that they're a month younger than how many months they've been since they've been born. And it is not uncommon for kids to learn skills in one developmental area, like in their language skills, and then their development in another area, like in their motor skills, may slow. Because our brains don't multitask as much as we like to think that we can. Kids need to focus also on one skill area at a time. So we're going to jump right into then milestones. So first, the things that we expect kids to be able to do at the age of 1, with their language and communication, we expect kids to be able to follow some simple directions, like give me the ball. They'll be using simple gestures like shaking their head no, waving bye-bye, using exclamations like uh-oh, and saying mama and daddy or mama dada. Kids at 1 year of age are expected also to be imitating words that you say.
Kids at 1 year will imitate words that you say.
And then when
sorry.
we are looking at social emotional skills, we're expecting that kids of this age range, they might start crying when mom or dad leave. They're starting to have some favorite things and people that they really gravitate towards. They can hand you books or toys that they want to use. And they're playing really simple games like patty cake and peekaboo.
So cognitively, at the age of 1, we are expecting kids to really start exploring their environment. So believe it or not, banging 2 objects together is an important milestone and a good step forward in their play skills. So as you're playing with them, we want to encourage toy banging, thinking about like hiding our toys and seeing if they are able to look for them and realize that the toy is missing. As we're looking at books, thinking about starting to point at pictures when we name objects. And then as far as like looking to hide things, we see them start to take the things in and out of objects as well. And then at 1, we would expect that they start to follow simple directions. The example here is pick up the toy, but it would be like simple directions that they're hearing a lot at home.
And then we expect to see with like movement and physical development, them sitting on the ground without help, maybe playing with toys, pulling up to stand on furniture, just such as the coffee table, and cruising, so moving to get a toy while holding onto the coffee table. We expect to see them potentially standing alone without their arms holding them up on a coffee table or something like that, and then they may be able to take a few steps without holding on.
Okay, so thinking about facilitating development, before I jump into the 1 year age, I realized I didn't ask at the beginning of the presentation. So I'm just curious if people feel comfortable in the chat, just kind of letting us know the age ranges of the kiddos you have at home, just so we have an idea, so we can really appeal to you guys, and maybe set a little extra time on those if needed. But we'll let those kind of come in. All right, cool. We've got a 4.5-year-old. I know someone in the beginning said they had a 6-month-old. So, okay, cool. Thanks for letting us know what's out there. Oh, congratulations, a brand new baby, 1 month old. Okay, good. So 1 year age. As your child is hitting that 1 year, in order to facilitate these milestones, some really important things are to build upon what your child is trying to say. So if they are saying mama, that's really good. But then we want to say like, oh yeah, mama's eating, or just kind of really start to expand what they are saying. Nursery rhymes are a really good way to build that language skill early on. It's repetitive, and it is just something that children can predict easily. As you are just doing anything at home, if you're playing, if you're cooking, just like anything around the house, it's really helpful to just talk about what you're doing and label a lot of the common items that you have in your house and potty parts. Make sure that those 1-year-olds have safe places to explore. So they might be walking or like crawling and getting everywhere, but we want to make sure that it's safe for them, but allow them to kind of explore all those different senses. Let's see, what else? Musical instruments, that's a fun one. Maybe a noisy one, but using pots and pans and encouraging different ways to, again, just explore those senses. So we're holding things and making noise, we're hearing it, we're maybe talking about it. So those are all really good, just different activities. So thinking about those 1-year-olds still, one super easy and basic toy that is helps with all of these skills are stacking cups. So we've got a picture here of like the more traditional stacking cups, and then I also have a picture of a little bit more, there's like squigs stacking cups that kind of suction together. But either way, they're really good because you can sit together and use joint attention. So that's means you guys are like, you and your child are thinking about the same activity and sharing that interest. But thinking about stacking them up, we can talk about up and down in those prepositions, labeling and pointing to the different colors, counting them, cause and effect. We stack it up and we can go boom and they fall down. And then just all of the vocabulary, again, that can go along with this. We've got the colors, we've got numbers. We can talk about shapes up and down. And then using them as tools too is a really fun way. So yes, they're made for stacking and putting inside of each other, but what else can you do with them? Can you bring them in the bathtub and use them as cups to wash our body, or practice those drinking skills before the soap goes in the water? And then the other toy that we have recommended is soft foam blocks. So again, just thinking about those beginning skills. So we're beginning to have some imagination and pretend play. What can you do? Can we build a castle with the blocks? Again, you're keeping that joint attention, so you're both thinking about the same toy. The colors, shapes, sizes, prepositions, counting, cause, effect. Kind of the same thing I talked about with the first thing, but just again, a different toy, super basic, but really good versatility. Jen.
So we're going to move right along and talk about 18-month-olds now. At the 18-month age, we are expecting kids to be able to use their language and communicate by using several single words, saying and shaking their head no. And they do it a lot because it's a very powerful word. They find very quickly that they can get response from people by saying and shaking their head no. And we also expect that they begin to point to show you what they want.
As far as social and emotional skills go, kids at this point are starting to really show affection towards familiar people, people that they know and recognize. And at the same time, they might start to be a little bit afraid of strangers and have temper tantrums. We expect them to start engaging in some really simple pretend play, for example, feeding a baby doll or pretending to sleep. And they're starting to be a little bit more independent. You know, they might explore alone as long as their parent is nearby.
Cognitively, by a year and a half, we would expect that kids can actually understand at least 200 words, and they should be able to point to and identify most common objects kind of within your household that they're using a lot. They should be able to point to at least one body point or body part. And then those pretend play skills are really starting to come into action. They've really been watching you and studying you now for a year and a half. So they want to start doing everything that you're doing. So we're going to start feeding animals and dolls, pointing to get the attention because mom, I want this. And then really start to follow those one-step verbal commands without any gestures. So earlier we're following commands and we might be pointing to help them understand, but now if we just say sit down, they should be able to follow that direction.
And then when it comes to movement, they are walking a lot more, they are walking alone, and they may even be pulling toys while they are walking. They can help them undress themselves, and then they may be drinking from a cup or eating with a spoon.
And ways that you can help facilitate your child learning these skills are doing things like playing with blocks, balls, books, puzzles, all kinds of toys that are versatile and teach cause and effect. You want to encourage them to pretend in their play. And kids often like to have books read to them at this stage, but we also want to encourage just talking about the pictures in the books. It doesn't have to be the words that are printed on the page, but what do you see? And then another thing is that when they are beginning or when they are using words, they may not be saying them very clearly. So repeat what they say, but say the words clearly. Use simple, clear phrases when you're talking to them and ask them simple and meaningful questions. And then some toys that are great for this age are, again, cause and effect toys. We chose to select a pop-up toy because you can use lots of exclamations and simple words like hi and bye, or you can count them as they pop up. And hand puppets. And these are very cute hand puppets that are on the picture, but know that you can make your own hand puppets too. You can take a mismatched sock out of your basket in your laundry room and draw a little face on the end of the sock to make your own puppet, or use a paper bag. So the next age group that we have then is the 2-year-old. Lots of fun things happening when kids reach the age of 2. We expect that they are using at least 200 words. That's pretty impressive for a 2-year-old. That's a lot of language. So they should know the names of familiar people and body parts. They're using 2 to 4 word sentences, asking questions. What's that? What's that? To get attention. They're saying, talk to me. I wanna have a conversation with you. Again, following simple directions They're going to repeat words that they hear you say in conversation, even when those words that you're using when you're talking to your spouse or a friend when you think the kids aren't even listening. And the intelligibility is how much of their speech can you understand. At the age of 2, kids should be I'm sorry. Yes, at the age of 2, sorry, you should be able to understand at least 50 and up to 70% of what they say.
Socially, kids at this age are really starting to branch out. They're wanting to be a lot more independent. So they may start copying others, especially adults and other children. Like Jen was saying, you have to watch what you're saying and doing because they'll copy you, and that's how they're learning. They also are going to start engaging in a lot of parallel play. So meaning that they're really kind of doing their own thing, exploring on their own, but they might be sitting next to and around other kids. And they could start with some really basic games with other people, such as chase.
So cognitively, kids should be able to start to sort those shapes and colors. So before we were really working on labeling them for them, but now they should kind of start to recognize some of those shapes and colors and put them in different piles. If we have some sentences and rhymes, they should be able to complete them. So if we're doing something that would be familiar, maybe reading a familiar book, you should be able to start the sentence and then kind of stop with that main word, and they should be able to fill in the word. Their make-believe games start to come out, even if you're not really sure what they're thinking about. But it's always fun to see, and that's a good indicator. They should also look at building things up. So whether it's blocks or random objects you have in your house, we want them to start building towers. That would be super appropriate. At 2, they might start to have some hand dominance. You might see them starting to use one hand more than the other. And then following 2-step directions that are related to each other. So here the example is pick up the book and put it on the shelf. So in this instance, we are just talking about the book, but 2 different things to do with it. And then while you're reading those books, they should not only be able to point to them now, but also actually label them and verbally tell you what they see in the books.
And then with movement, they should be able to stand on their tiptoes. We'll see more of a slight single leg balance with kicking a ball, beginning to run, or walking up and down the stairs while holding onto the railing. They may be able to climb up and down furniture without help. They can throw a ball overhand, and they might start using a pen or a marker to draw or make copies of straight lines or circles.
So, what are some ways that you can use play to help your kids meet these milestones? One really useful and fun thing to do is involve your children in simple chores. Um, give them a broom, help you with sweeping. A really fun way is having them involved with dinner or making fun snacks. You can hand your kids some of the ingredients, help to stir, taste test. And this is a great way to help them develop those language skills. You can talk about exactly what you're doing, describe the ingredients you're using, and motor skills as well. If they're carrying that really big broom around, they're building some strength, having the control to dump ingredients. Looking specifically at language, you'll notice that they'll start to say things incorrectly, but rather than correcting what they say, repeat the words and phrases in the correct format. That way they're making that association between what they're trying to say and the correct way to communicate that. That's much more encouraging, and then they'll repeat it in the future. Because as we talked about, they repeat everything that you say. Additionally, we want to encourage that your children kind of go beyond gesturing and pointing for things that they want. As parents, you really pick up on what your kids want and need, and often we just jump to get it for them because we're used to what they're communicating. But now that they're getting older and they're developing a lot more language, we can encourage them to try and explain what they want as well. So, if they're just pointing to the fridge for milk, maybe they're also asking milk, please. A great way to develop social skills and motor skills is just to take them to the park. All of the equipment is really fun to explore. They'll naturally make friends and engage with other kids their age. And as more things start to open up, we can bring them to trampoline parks or indoor children's museums and things as well. So a couple of fun toys for this age range. I'll highlight Mr. Potato Head first. As far as motor skills go, you can take the pieces in and out, put them in funny places, and start labeling body parts and facial features. You can be encouraging questions and asking for specific pieces, talking about the shapes, the color, the sizes, and then also understanding how to put them in and where they go. Another fun toy is that ball and hammer there. Similarly with the language, we can talk about the shapes and the colors and if the ball is going in or coming out. As far as motor skills, this is really good for working on those visual motor skills, to be able to hold the hammer and aim at the ball and hit it to go in, as well as hitting it hard enough to go through, but not so hard that the hammer goes flying across the room. And talking about what you're doing. This can also be more of a social game because mom could have a ball and brother could have a ball and you're sharing and putting them in. Another fun one here is this adjustable height tower. Really any similar toys where you have cars or trains and tracks that they have to go on are great. This particular one where it raises up and down is awesome because it encourages a lot of development of motor skills and moving from one position to another. So when it starts really low, they could be laying on the floor or sitting, and when you raise it up, we encourage that tall kneeling or squatting, or even standing. If you don't have an adjustable one, but you have some tracks or cars, I just would encourage changing up where you play with it. You could start on the floor, you can move to the coffee table, on the couch. Additionally, as you're moving it around, it's really great for encouraging imagination and pretend play. So where are the cars going? What are they doing? How fast are they moving? Do they have friends in the town? Build off of what your kids come up with. They have so many good ideas. And then also that cause and effect of like, if I put the car on the top, it's gonna roll down. If I push it too hard, it might fall off.
I think we'll all just kind of keep going here tonight. So we can keep going.
All right, so we're going to move into those 3-year-olds. Once kids reach the age of 3 in the areas of communication and language, now they can follow directions with 2 and 3 steps. So go get the milk, put it on the table, and I don't know, I just drew a blank on the 3rd step. But giving some more difficult directions to follow, some more complicated things. Those kids can combine 4 words into sentences. They are naming most familiar objects, and they're understanding prepositions. So it's fun and play. You can kind of have a scavenger hunt and tell them, oh, there's one on the table, there's one under the chair. Oh, go look in the cup holder. So giving a variety of prepositions in your directions. And they're also using pronouns like I, me, we, and you. And they begin having more turn-taking conversations. And at this point also, when they're talking, you should be able to understand them at least 75% of the time. Both you and even unfamiliar people. Not that we expect them to talk to unfamiliar people, but that if you're standing in line at the grocery store and you and your child are talking, the person behind you can understand what your child is saying.
Socially, kids at this stage are becoming much more comfortable separating from their caregivers, engaging with other kids. They can start to take turns because they're also understanding mine, his, and hers. So we could say it's my turn, now it's his turn, and it's her turn, and work through that process of waiting. They are showing some more emotional skills, so they can show affection and concerns for friends on their own without adults prompting them. They're also engaging in some more self-care skills compared to when they were younger. So they might start dressing and undressing themselves in the beginning of the day and at night.
Cognitively, these 3-year-olds should be starting to work with toys that have a bunch of different options for manipulation. So thinking about buttons, whether it's snap buttons or the buttons where you can like push it through the hole, lowering levers. So a lot of toys have like levers, you can push them up and down, like that adjustable tower that Nicole was talking about earlier. And just in general, moving parts for toys. They should be able to manipulate them. Again, make believe, it's really starting to pick up here. So now we're incorporating the dolls, animals, and people into our make believe play. 3-year-olds should have a little bit more interest in puzzles. So we're not talking about like 3 or 4 pieces where there's like a cow and a chicken and you're matching them, but the interlocking puzzles. And then if you're asking them to give me 2 pieces, I want 2 pieces of the puzzle and you can have 2 pieces of the puzzle. They should be able to understand what that means and then correctly give you those 2 pieces. They just want to continue to build their independence here. So as you're reading books, they might be turning those pages by themselves, even beyond the cardboard books, the regular pages with paper, they should be able to turn those. Building towers of more than 6 blocks. So we're getting a little bit taller. And then as far as toys with lids or jars and door handles, they should start to kind of like understand that they can twist it to open it.
And then with physical development, we can see that they're climbing well, running easily, and pedaling a tricycle. When walking up and down stairs, they are walking with the same foot each time. So either right foot all the way up or left foot all the way down, for example. And then we see that they're jumping off of like shorter surfaces, jumping down and jumping over smaller objects. And then how to facilitate this development, you can take your child to an environment that lets them interact with their peers, such as play groups or story times. And then this should create opportunities for sharing interactions, work on their patience and joint play. You can read more often to your child and discuss what's happening in the books, such as the characters' emotions, if they're happy or if they're sad. And then you can give your child directions that have 2 or 3 steps and introduce art projects and sensory play. So some of these toys kind of going off the directions in the sensory play. The Play-Doh, you can create that at home or you could buy some at the store. If you create it at home, that helps with like the 2 or 3 step directions. Also works on sensory and like fine motor of playing with the Play-Doh. Otherwise, we also have silly 6 pins, but you could just make bowling at your house with like empty water bottles and stuff like that. Works on taking turns, them and their siblings or mom and dad. With this one, it helps identify matching colors, works on rolling the ball down, and helps with confidence building.
All right, 4-year-olds. When kids reach the age of 4, we are expecting them to be using 5-word sentences, asking lots more variety of questions. So how, why, gonna get lots of why questions, and even when. And then they can now begin to answer questions. So if they don't want to put their boots on, you say, well, what if you go outside without your boots on? What would happen? And they should be able to tell you, my feet will be cold, or my feet will get wet, my socks will be wet. They should be able to tell you stories, and they may come home from daycare or school or a friend's house even, singing a new song that they learned or repeating a poem that they heard. And their speech should be understood, easily understood all the time.
Kids at this age should be able to cooperate with other children. Often they're starting 4K or preschool of some sort, and should be able to follow basic rules engaging with other kids. They also quite enjoy this, so they've moved away from that parallel play and they're starting to really play with other kids, and they would rather play with other kids and engage with them than off playing by themselves most of the time. They are also starting to talk about and learn about emotions a lot more, and empathy with other people really increases. They are able to think about and report past events. So, if they're coming home from preschool, you can ask specific questions about what they did that day, and they might be able to tell you some things. And they are able to talk about things that they really like.
Cognitively, these 4-year-olds should not, so before we were talking about sorting shapes and colors and numbers, now they should really be able to name them. So correctly labeling the colors, and starting to count at least some of their numbers. And with that, they should start to understand the idea of counting, and then understand the idea of time. So if they start asking like, when's dad gonna be home, or when is mom gonna be home? If you're pointing to the clock, and explaining that, oh, we have to wait until the hand goes to the top or until the hand gets to the bottom. Obviously they're not telling time or anything like that, but understanding that there's some time related to how long we're waiting. Remembering parts of a story. So it could be a book that they've been reading, and they should be able to kind of like replay that story and read that to you a little bit, or it could be a story that somebody has told them and they can kind of start to retell that. They should be able to understand same and different. So maybe they're sitting next to you and they say, oh mom, look, we have the same color shirt, or my shoes look different than his shoes look. And then with that storytelling, and jumping back to that, predicting kind of what will happen next. So maybe it's a new story, and they've never read The Three Little Pigs before, and you get to the last book or the last house, and you say, oh, what do you think will happen next? And they'll be able to have like kind of a legitimate guess about what may actually happen.
And then with movements, we should expect that they could stand on one foot or hop on one foot for up to 2 seconds. They can pour or cut their own food with help or supervision. They can catch a bounce ball, whether that be from you or if they're bouncing that by themselves most of the time. And then when they walk up and down stairs now, instead of going with the same foot all the way up, they'll actually go every other foot all the way up the stairs or down the stairs.
So facilitating development for our 4-year-olds, we want to make sure that all of our play is really starting to be make-believe and imaginative. So, before they were pulling in the different people. So now let's bring all of the elements together. So we've got people, we've got stuffed animals. Let's make a really elaborate play scheme that allows them to get creative, use good language, and then depending on what's happening, we could get really motor involved too, and start acting things out. As far as choices, making sure, so they want to be independent, right? And it's helpful for us to grow their independence and giving choices. So instead of saying, what do you want to eat tonight, right? Because that's unlimited. We could say, do you want to eat chicken nuggets or do you want to eat mac and cheese? So you're still giving them control. They still get to choose, but you as a parent are still in control of really what the options are. And that's good too, because it helps with their language. So instead of saying like, oh, what do you want to eat? And they have no idea, or there's just too many options, you're really limiting it, and then giving them specific options to pick from and to repeat and talk to you about. Let's see. Using correct grammar when you're talking to your child. So when they were younger, a lot of moms and dads will engage in what's called motherese. So you're talking with that higher pitched voice, and you're really like getting down there and maybe using some baby talk. But now with those 4-year-olds, we should really be using correct grammar and sentence structure because they are truly picking up on everything and they need to be getting ready for school. So as you're talking too, like thinking about, well, first we will do this and then we will do this. And finally, we will end by going home. So using those sequential terms helps them kind of understand what's going to go on in their day, help them like work through maybe you're doing something really fun and you know it's going to be hard for them to stop. So just kind of foreshadowing, okay, well, we're playing Play-Doh. I know you're really having a fun time. So first we're going to play with Play-Doh and then we'll clean up. And then after that, we get to go see Dad. And then finally taking time to answer those why questions. So as parents, it can get a little bit annoying sometimes when they're just like, but why? Why is this? Why is that? And it's easy to just be like, I don't know, or go ask somebody else. But if we're able to answer that, they just really want to know. It's helping them learn. It's helping them develop language. So just take the time to answer the why questions. So thinking about 4-year-olds and some appropriate toys. So here we have the Critter Clinic. There's little doors with keys and there's animals inside of it. So you can work on some pretend play, imagination skills. It's a little vet or like pet doctor. So you can work on, thinking about the vocabulary that might come along with going to the vet. Fine motor development with the keys. You have to match the key to the color and then hold on to the key, rotate your hand to get the key in and turn the lock and then pull it open. So lots of really good fine motor skills there. Talked about color recognition. And just the vocabulary that comes along with it is really age appropriate. And then another fun, popular toy right now is magnetiles. And so magnetiles are really good for pretend play. You could take turns guessing what each other is making. You could just make really abstract looking things and then turn it into something. So really using that imagination there, working on the stacking and building and balancing of the blocks and the tiles. And then following directions. So you could make it a little bit more structured even and say like, all right, well, my turn, I'm going to tell you what to do. Take the yellow block and put it on top of the green block. And then you could have your intern have your child tell you what to do next. So that's really building upon kind of the understanding and what's going to happen next in those different language vocabulary terms.
Can you believe we're already talking about 5-year-olds? We have zoomed through the ages. So at the 5-year-old level, we expect that kids are talking very clearly. They're using up to 8-word sentences. They can tell simple stories using full sentences, and they're able to use future tense. So they can say things like, I'm going to go to grandma's. And then when they are asked, they should be able to tell somebody their name and their address when they are 5.
At this age, they are starting to use more indirect requests. So explaining that, oh, I'm hungry, knowing that they mean they want to eat instead of saying, I want to eat. They're really more interested in what other kids think and do. So they want to please their friends. They want to be like their friends. They're going to be comparing a lot more fun toys that they have or things that their friends got to do that they would also like to do. They're starting to understand a little bit more what is real and make-believe. So they're still going to be engaging in that imaginary play, but they're a little bit more understanding of what it is. And also being able to understand characters and things like that. They are going to continue to be building on those emotional skills, talking more in depth about how they're feeling and emotions that other people experience when they're recognizing them. And they can also tell more stories at this age. So their narratives are going to be unfocused sequences of events. So things that they've done or seen or experienced, and they can continue to tell you them about them.
So cognitively, our 5-year-old should be able to count at least 10 things, and counting them with some one-to-one correspondence. So if you have 10 pennies in front of you, they should be able to point to them and like accurately count the objects. They should be able to draw people with at least 6 different body parts. So it could be still a stick person, right? But making sure there's the different body parts with ears and eyes and nose. They are starting to have more interest in copying shapes when they're writing things, and also starting to print some letters and numbers.
And then at this point, they can stand on one foot for up to 10 seconds and actually can hop on one foot more often than they did before. They're using a fork and spoon, can use the toilet or the bathroom on their own. And then they are swinging, climbing, skipping, and galloping.
So what can you do to help your child develop these skills? I'm very excited to talk about the pictures, but let's talk about a few other things first. So again, you know, kids like to read familiar books. They like the same book read repeatedly so that they can begin to tell the story themselves or predict what's going to happen next. But now we want to encourage the child to maybe pick up a new book and make up their own story just based on what the pictures are showing. And you know, this might be a familiar book or a book that they've never seen before. What do you think is going to happen? We want to encourage them to be independent, and giving them some real life experiences. So, you know, going when you're at the store, if they have, you know, earned a treat, maybe they can pay for that piece of candy, or you know, maybe you give them a quarter to go put in the candy machine and you stand by and supervise them doing it. And then when they have papers from school, expecting them to put their name on the paper, signing their name to a thank you note or to a picture that they drew. Obstacle courses. I am a fan of obstacle courses. Obstacle courses are great outdoors and indoors. I have some crazy ideas of things to do with indoor obstacle courses. I like the picture on the bottom where it shows using masking tape to make different levels of obstacles to climb over or crawl under. Chalk works great. And yes, you can use chalk inside on your carpeting. You just have to scuff that floor a little or use a rag to brush the chalk off the carpet. And then as much as you can, go to the playgrounds. You know, hopefully you have good luck with finding healthy people who are out at playgrounds and getting some friends or some peers to play along with. And then and some appropriate toys for this age. I like talking about the Doorbell House by Melissa and Doug, because there's lots of people, there's lots of parts. So there's lots of opportunities for different language and developing their vocabulary. They're working on those key skills, the eye-hand coordination, being able to turn, locks. So again, something small but yet versatile, so you can do lots of pretend as well.
All right, and then this slide, we're going to talk about some red flags. And so one thing we just want to emphasize is learning these signs and acting early. So a couple of red flags that we had on here is if your child is 1 to 2 months behind their peers, especially if it's across all developmental areas, whether it be speech, fine motor, and gross motor. If your child does not seem to be progressing across these skill areas, especially with extra help or extra attention when trying to complete these. If there's increased stress and anxiety when trying to complete these tasks that are age appropriate, when completing these tasks, if the skills aren't consistent when using the same environment or with the same people, the same objects, and then if these tasks, the difficulty with these tasks end up impacting their when they engage with peers or at home or at school. And then these are just some questions that you should consider when you're going to go buy some toys. For example, is the toy safe and appropriate or durable? If they can use it in multiple ways, if it's appealing to several senses, if you can use it in more places or in different positions, promotes communication interactions, if it's appealing, and then if the toy is worth the cost. And then below is just a website that we found applicable to this slide that talks about play. And then we had talked about when we were talking about our presentation that toys with less battery or that aren't battery operated tend to be better for kids. They allow for more imaginative play, and it allows for less copying of whatever the toy is making sound. So less copying of the noises or the phrases that the toy is saying.
Okay, so we're just gonna bring it all together here at the end, and we have like a little activity put together. First, I see we have a question. We'll chat about that real quick. Yes, tell grandparents no batteries, please. Nobody appreciates it, and it's honestly just like the batteries are not always the best for development. So kudos, good luck, encourage it. I am with you.
So
the
this,
activity, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that this is just a visual for you to think, kind of think like we do, think like a therapist. So when we're looking at toys and activities, you know, what's required and what's being stimulated, you know, are we stimulating the senses? What's required cognitively? What's required physically? You know, how much encouragement for learning different skills are we providing to the kids?
All right, so we gave you a ton of information and a bunch of fun toys that you can go and buy and use. But we also wanted to do just a quick little activity to show you that you can incorporate play and encourage your kids' natural development with very little. And so for this example, we just put a ball in a book because those tend to be things that almost everyone has around. We'll just spend a few minutes on this activity so we don't keep you all too long, but start by picking an age group. Maybe think about the kiddos that you have at home and what developmental milestones that they are currently working towards. And then brainstorm 2 to 3 fun ways that you can encourage those age appropriate skills using a ball and or a book. So we'll give you a couple minutes to just think about it. If you want to throw some ideas in the chat, you can. And then we'll move forward and give you some of our ideas as well. Looks like we have some fun ideas coming through the chat already. Acting out a scene from a book for some of our older kiddos, bouncing the ball back and forth, and to make it more challenging, count as you go. Here are a few additional ideas that we came up with. I know we have some young ones in the group, so working towards those 1-year developmental milestones. You can play peekaboo behind the book, push the ball as you're starting to cruise. If kids are getting up on the couch and wanting to walk, you can push the ball or fun toys along. As you're reading, instead of just reading, naming the pictures. And having your child retrieve the correct item. So say, oh, go get the book or go get the red ball and bring it back to me. 18 months, you can up it a little bit. Have your child point at the toy that they want, whether it's the book or the ball, and then play a game with whatever that they selected. You can use more imagination, pretending that the ball is different foods to eat, putting the ball on a blanket and pulling it around the house, and tossing back and forth. Once they get to 2 years, we can really be pointing and naming pictures in the book, and the child can take more control of that, playing hide and seek with the objects, kicking the ball. Any imaginary play that your kiddos come up with is great. And then for our older kids, our 3-year-olds might want to hide the objects, or you can hide the objects and then give them hints of it's on the couch or under the blanket. You can start asking more specific questions about the picture in the story, and take turns, whether it's taking turns throwing the ball, taking turns turning the pages of the book, and all those fun obstacles can start to come into play here as well. 4-year-olds are going to be talking more in depth about the characters in the book, making predictions about what will happen next. You can start to make up your own story, or like someone suggested, acting out the scene from the book, bouncing the ball, and you can add in some fun gross motor challenges here, balance on one leg while you're reading a book, or for a certain number of bounces. And then our 5-year-olds can discuss more in depth the emotions and feelings of the book characters. You can create a really complex obstacle course through your house or outside, and acting out the story.
Does anyone have any questions for us tonight? We appreciate everyone who stuck with us. I hope you can take away something for right now, and then maybe for the ones with littles, a good reference for you to look at as they grow up, because they grow up so fast. Any questions? Well, thanks for coming, guys. Have a good rest of your night, and hopefully you can enjoy the warmer weather that's coming ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And this video will be up on the CI Therapies website. So if you want to go back or look at different resources that we talked about, this video will be available there. But thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I know I learned a lot, but have a great rest of your night and a good weekend. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us on CI Connect for our parent training series. If you have any questions, please contact us at connect@citherapies.com. We hope you join us again in the future.